Right, welcome everyone to Committee of the Whole. Commissioners, just a couple things. We're going to start off today with a presentation for our audit. Item number 4 has been pulled at the manager's request, so just an FYI on that. And then after Committee of the Whole, we do have public safety meeting today and legislative team. So just an FYI, we don't have any executive sessions. All right, so with that, we'll get started. And so we'll start off today with our review of our 2016 annual audit. And we'll invite Sarah Vanderwerf up, and then I'm sure our partners who helped us with this year.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's great to be here this morning with our audit wrap-up. We have another clean opinion, which is a good thing, and the publication of this year's PAFR is also our first major success of our new financial system. We were able to get it done on time, so that's a good thing. And another housekeeping item, we delivered the bound copies of your CAFR to your boxes, so hopefully you got those. And the Citizens Guide is also available online. It has the same cover page, so it looks like that, and the links are available on our website under About the City and Transparency. So I would like to introduce John LaFramboise from BDO Seidman, who has worked with us for several years now, and we're very happy to have him here to give us our audit wrap-up.
Great. Welcome.
And let's see, we'll get him set up here.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So what we try and do, instead of going through the entire CAFR with you, is we try and summarize and just discuss it more verbally. Obviously, if anybody ever has any questions on the actual numbers, we're more than willing to talk with you about that. But our experience is that just kind of talking through it and just highlighting some of the more important aspects of the audit is more beneficial to the commission. So with that said, if you have well, it's up on the screen as well, but I'm going to skip to page 3 of that audit wrap-up document. So we titled this page, The Status of Our Audit. So as Sarah mentioned, we have issued a clean opinion, or what we call an unmodified opinion now. The opinion is actually 3 pages long. There's a lot in there. What you need to know is, yes, it's a clean opinion. So a few things that I'd like to point out. The second bullet point on this page, the scope of the work performed was substantially the same as what was described in our earlier audit planning communications. So for every audit, we have 2 levels of communication we're required to have with the committee. At the beginning of the audit plan, and the end of the audit wrap-up. I think it's important to let you know that we didn't have any substantial changes, because what that would tell me and what it would tell you is that, okay, something happened during our planning of the audit and when we actually got there to do the audit. And sometimes that happens, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it could be. We don't like surprises in the audit. Management doesn't like surprises during the audit. It causes delays. So there's always little things that happen. But if there was ever anything that was significantly different, like, okay, wow, just new accounts on the balance sheet or a new source of revenue that we hadn't been told about, those are things that, we would be communicating to you at this time. So the 4th bullet point, we've also completed our audit of federal awards, the CFA, if you will, and we also issued an unmodified or clean opinion on that as well. So it is a separate document where every year we look at the different federal awards that you receive, and we select a sample of programs and we test those to make sure that you're spending that money in compliance with the requirements of those federal awards. So again, that was a clean opinion as well. Scrolling down here towards the bottom, the second bullet point from the bottom, all records and information requested by BDO were freely available upon inspection. Anytime we do an audit, we ask for lots of things, especially an audit of this size. And we don't mind having discussions with management. Okay, why are we looking at this? And those are normal things that happen during an audit. Where we get concerned is if we have management saying, I'm not going to give that to you, or just really causing, grief, if you will. And we didn't have any of that, which I think, again, important for you to know. So, going on to the next page, the results of our audit. So this is where anytime there's a significant change, a new accounting pronouncement that really impacts the financial statements or the notes, this is where we like to just kind of high level let you know. So this year, so fiscal year ending June 30, 2016, there was a new pronouncement called GASB Statement Number 72, which is it's a fair value statement. So in reality, this didn't impact how you measure anything on your balance sheet, but what it did do is increase some of the footnote disclosure. So for example, the investments that you have, this basically will go through, this pronouncement requires you to, in the footnotes, talk about, okay, how are these different investments measured? Are they more like common stocks, very easily determined, or are there more complex investments that are harder to measure? It just gives the readers an idea of the complexity of the investments that the city is invested in. So again, it's a new disclosure that was implemented this year. But again, didn't really change how things were recorded on the balance sheet or your income statement, if you will. This next section, corrected and uncorrected misstatements, these are what we call our journal entries. Corrected misstatements are those things where during the audit, if we find something that needs to be recorded and management agrees and says, okay, yep, we're going to record those, that's what we call a corrected misstatement. Auditors found something, management corrected it, and the correction is shown in the financial statements. And we did have a few of those. An uncorrected misstatement would be auditors find something, management looks at it, decides, well, we don't think we need to record that. And if it's not material, the auditors oftentimes, that's fine, right? Not everything has to be recorded. But if it's a significant uncorrected misstatement, we would at least let you know that they're out there. But we didn't have any of those. So again, I just wanted to explain the differences in the two. So, any questions so far?
Nope.
All right. Next page, internal control over financial reporting. So for those of you who have been through this presentation before, this is the fun part of our presentation where we talk about any deficiencies that we identified during the audit. And the first part is just explaining the different degrees of deficiencies. The worst one is what we call a material weakness. That's where there's really the control is such that's lacking that there truly is a good likelihood that there could be a material misstatement in your financial statements because you lack this certain internal control. Significant deficiency is a little bit less severe than a material weakness, and a control deficiency or just a normal deficiency in internal control, kind of those things that best practices, right? So what I can tell you is that during our audit, we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control, but we did identify 3 different deficiencies that we brought to management's attention, and as you can see here in this document, they've already responded to the deficiency. The first 2 are very similar, so I'm going to speak to them as one. It has to do with the bank reconciliation process, and then going to the next page, the investment reconciliation process. And both of these are a result of the system conversion, right? So just the reports that were coming out are different than what there were in the past, and it's making it much difficult for management to reconcile amounts to what's in the general ledger. There's a big manual process that has to occur. So again, these are just things that need to be improved on, which management is aware of and working on, or maybe already is done. So any questions on those, first of all? Okay. The third deficiency relates to one of the component units. It's what we call a cutoff issue. So we found an invoice that was paid in fiscal 2017 that should have been recorded back in 2016. So again, just improvement in the process from identifying invoices that come in after year end but relate to the prior fiscal year and should be recorded as such. So, all right. So the last page I'm going to go over is just some of these other required communications. And all of these are things that we have to communicate to you. So I don't want to say that They're not all important, but some are more what I just like to go over. So in the middle of the page here, disagreements with management, we did not have any of those. This would be a situation where, okay, the auditors are saying something should be recorded this way, management disagrees, and there's a big argument, and there is none of that. The last point I want to go over, the significant difficulties encountered during the audit, we did not have any of those. If we did, we are required to communicate that to you. So everything else in this document is just an update on new accounting pronouncements that are coming. I think what you need to know is we do work with Sarah and Ruth to make sure that all those get implemented in the year that they need to. So they're just there for your information. So any questions?
Right. Turn to my colleagues, questions? We all had a chance to review this. Over here, any questions? No?
Just,
go ahead.
Mayor, I don't have a question, maybe just a comment, if I might. I think ultimately what this shows us is that internally the numbers that we report are accurate. I think it's probably important for us to, to take a look at how does these ratios and numbers compare from a debt position, from a savings rate, in terms of how our peer cities within the state or of comparable size around the U.S. are. I think that's not what we ask of this firm to do. We just want to make sure that we accurately report the news, which we do. But I think our body should probably take on to at least make sure that we have really good understanding. I think we've done some of that in the past, but it might be good to kind of take a fresh look this year, given where we come through and what we want to look towards, just to make sure that all those debt position and things are within balance.
That's a good idea, especially going into budget. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
Just want to thank staff for working on this. I know that it's a big project, and we have some members in our of staff that are very quiet and unassuming and don't try to take credit, but I want to certainly say thank you.
Yeah, that can't be underestimated. It's the number of hours that go into this report, not just the report itself, but throughout the year. Can't even imagine it. So, and we appreciate all their hard work as well, because the better job that they do, it makes our job easier, leads to lower fees. So,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Oh, one more comment, City Manager.
I would like to also commend Sarah and Ruth and all of the financial staff across the organization. I recall 10 years ago when we had the auditors citing control issues, and we actually paid someone to come in and help us. And it took a few years to get through the fight, but we did improve our control issues. And I remember not too many years ago when I first became city manager dreading this time of year, because there was always a long list of things that management had to respond to that were issues in the audit. Now, having said that, we always had a relatively clean audit, but there were always 10 or 12 issues. There's like almost nothing here.
There were disagreements with management.
Yes. And I just think it's staff is continually improving their work, and I hope you recognize that.
Yeah, we do, and we appreciate it. Thank you. All of us should be proud, everyone within this organization and all of us around this table. So thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
All right. All right, Commissioners, I'll then move to our agenda, and we'll take up Committee of the Whole, item number 2, and this is a resolution authorizing agreements with Kent County and GRCC related to amendments to the City of Grand Rapids DDA Development Area number 1 and the amended development plan and TIF plan. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
All right, and Chris Larson is here with us today, President and CEO of DGRI, to tell us about this.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Commission. Before I jump into this item, I do want to also just reflect upon the previous presentation of the audit and to remind you that DGRI and its fiduciary components also participate in that same audit process. And I'd like to thank Jana Wallace, who serves as the treasurer, to all 3 of our fiduciaries so that we can help to also produce a clean audit annually. But the item before you is we are internally calling it an assurance agreement. What it provides is some assurance to some of the partners in the DDA TIF plan, which include the community college as well as Kent County, that if for some reason either the DDA or the City Commission were to choose to revoke a number of the gestures and promises made in the TIF plan, that we would provide each one of those entities the opportunity to opt back out of the future districts. And specifically, this is referring to future special millage capture, as well as senior and veteran millage capture after the year 2024, as well as any modifications to the gain sharing agreements that we have created to help to refund back a portion of the taxes captured annually. We have worked to monetize what that looks like for the DDA, and we show a financial benefit right now for Kent County as an example of approximately $14 million over the 30-year life of the plan. And so this is an agreement that is outside of the DDA and TIF plan. It is necessary in this case because by state statute, the only two entities that are required to approve of the TIF plan locally are going to be the DDA as well as the City Commission. And this ensures that those promises and those negotiations that we've made with our partners at Kent County as well as the community college, that we wouldn't turn back on any of those promises that we've made to date.
Thank you, Chris. And colleagues, I'll add, we've had lengthy discussions about this around the table at the DDA, and we all support this. And I do think that this is a strong gesture on our part about our commitment to this partnership, both with the county and GRCC. And it's a partnership that's taken a long time to really move forward. And I give a lot of that credit to Chris and other people who came to the table to make this happen.
If I could add one more process update, just by virtue of the fact that there are two separate three-party agreements, you should know that the community college has approved basically the rescinding of their previous opt-outs as well as choosing to opt in with the contingency that this document be executed between the three parties. The DDA has approved its portion of the two separate contracts. That was done last Friday. Previously, Kent County at their fiscal committee voted unanimously to recommend it to the full Kent County Commission, which will happen on Thursday. And so the two remaining considerations to enter into this agreement remain with you today for the two, as well as Kent County with their portion of one of the two contracts.
Yeah, thank you. Question?
Not a question, but a comment. I think that from my perspective, both the amazing results that we're seeing financial development are regional, and we need to celebrate those regionally, and also the problems that we're dealing with, housing, poverty, our issues with our schools are also regional. And so I'm not preaching regionalization here. We know where that goes.
One can.
But, yeah, thank you. I'm not saying that.
Called regional cooperation.
But I think this is just a good example of the type of work that we need to be doing, the ongoing communication, the ongoing work around tables to figure out these issues and celebrate the successes. So this is a good first step, and I hope it is reciprocated. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I would echo that. It's really good to see this direction happen, and it seems almost as though a Kent County official endorsement of tax increment financing districts, of which we have others. And so we look forward to, Chris, this won't be with you, but with the city, working with them in relation to SIDS and other things around that they have opted out of as well, to see if there might be an opportunity to also opt into those as well.
Any other comments?
If I could add just one more comment to that, to Commissioner Schaefer. And so as a part of this for the county, what they'll have to do is modify their economic development policy. Previously, most of you are aware that they have a very hard ceiling at 10% of revenues that could be affected by TIF jurisdictions. So this basically creates a window of opportunity for future TIFs or renewal of TIFs to determine how to keep the county back at the table so that we can continue working together on issues that, as Commissioner Allen said, are germane to the entire county.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries.
Thank you.
Thanks again. All right, next that will take us to a resolution scheduling a public hearing to consider submittal of a grant application for the renovation of Clemente Park.
So moved.
So
All right, and our Parks Director, David, is here. David Marquardt.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. David Marquardt, Director of Parks and Recreation. I got to bring this up to my height here again. This is a resolution setting a public hearing for February 21st for application of grant funds with the state DNR. This is for Clemente Park, where we are planning to make improvements in conjunction with improvements taking place with our stormwater group, ESD, in the city of Grand Rapids. We are looking at this area for significant changes to our stormwater structure in that neighborhood, the Black Hills neighborhood. And as a part of that, we've been working very closely with Mike Lund's team and thinking about ways in which we can incorporate some more green infrastructure into our park space as we are making millage improvements alongside of those stormwater improvements. So this is a nice opportunity for us to pull together play in more of an environmental aspect and incorporate millage improvements with ESD dollars and these potential grant dollars. So the grant that we will be asking for is a $300,000 grant toward a $1.5 million project total cost. The 25% match will be $75,000, which would come out of our millage budget.
Okay, questions? Go ahead.
Just wanted to thank you for making sure that the Roosevelt Park and Black Hills neighborhoods were included, as well as Southwest Community Campus. I know that it's kind of like the backyard for that school, and there are so many kids and so much happening over there, and they're landlocked, and so I know that they use that space quite frequently when weather permits.
Agreed.
And I know this isn't my ward.
That's,
As the
but
first
you did go
ward, I'm
first,
looking
that's
like,
okay.
what are you
That's
talking
all
about?
right, yeah.
But your kids do go to Southwest.
Yeah.
David, can you walk us through timeline? So public hearing, when is it submitted? When will we know? When is the bulk of this redevelopment scheduled to take place?
Yep. So timeline, public hearing is scheduled for February 21st. The grant is submitted to the state DNR early April, that first week in April. And then we are working through concept design right now with the community. We had one meeting last evening. We've got more meetings next week. We met with the school last week as well. So as we're working through those concepts, we'll set priorities with the community, and then we know from the state whether or not we are awarded grant funds by June of this year. And then, of course, as we all know, it takes a good year to get contracts in place if awarded funds before any work can take place from the parks perspective. ESD is on a similar timeline, so it would be fiscal year 18 in which we would start to see improvements for Clemente Park.
Okay. All right, other questions? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right,
Thank you.
thanks. All right, next that will take us to, let's see, we're pulling item number 4 at the request of the manager, so that'll take us to item number 5. It's a resolution establishing the 637 Michigan Neighborhood Enterprise Zone in accordance with PA 147 of 1992.
So moved.
Support.
Good morning. This is the final approval for the project on Michigan Street, 637 Michigan Street. This is a project to demolish the 3 existing buildings that currently exist and construction of a new mixed-use 4-story building containing 3,600 square feet of ground floor retail and 44 market rate residential units. These apartments will be rented at slightly above the 80% of area median income. This is a $6 million investment with 13 new jobs expected at $15 an hour.
Okay. Questions? Commissioner?
Just a couple of comments. This is, I know that the Third Coast was very intentional in trying to hit that mark of 80 to 100% AMI. And as we are talking about affordable housing and areas of need in the city in terms of people with levels of income and the need for housing, I think it would be great to begin to have a discussion, and we are talking about this a bit at our Housing Advisory Committee, to recognize these efforts, either in an MOU, and I know we're still looking at community benefited agreements and how they're working out in Detroit and other areas, or with some sort of letter of intent to both recognize the effort that they're making and to make it public, because I think there's a level of accountability there, because I do know that they're talking about maintaining these goals over time, but we haven't really defined that. So if we could begin to consider that and have those conversations with the developers, I think that would be really a healthy thing to do.
Yeah. Thanks, Commissioner. Okay, go ahead.
This item has been before us in multiple iterations. This NEZ approval is one of the last. I First of all, I want to go on record as I don't think that I will approve any more NEZs until we revise them. So this will be my last yes vote on an NEZ. That I want to go on record as saying. I still think the city is not where the state intended it to be with NEZs. If you go back to the intent of the original law, that's first of all. Second of all, it's not. The jobs are $15 an hour. It's the average hourly wage is $15. That means half are above and half are below. And I feel very uncomfortable creating any job in the city for less than $15 an hour because, frankly, you can't afford to live in this city if you don't make $15 an hour. So I've got some concerns on this. I've voted yes on all the previous approvals, and I will vote yes on these, but I want to go on record with concern about wages and concern about where we're going with NEZs. So let it be duly noted.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner. Any other comments or questions?
Well, just that I agree with the Commissioner about this issue of wages, because we recognize that opportunity is, job opportunity and a decent wage is what allows people to buy a home in the first place and afford their rent. So another issue we've talked about is not having just that average, but to get that
Floor.
That complete, highest and lowest range of wages and have that reported. So,
Mayor.
thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say that I do support this, and I probably have a different opinion about supporting others. I think I still abide by this is a tool that we have to use, especially for urban areas, and to see new growth happen. And so I think ultimately there's definitely a laundry list of things that you would like to see and like to have. And I think if we're looking at it going forward, we probably need to hone in if we're going to see a change or a shift in at least how this body and this board approves those. Probably need to at least get the message out there of what those items are that you have to hit and where those targets have to be. In the past, it's been looking more what's the economic benefit overall to the city, and I think that's an easy case that we've made, and we make with this one and pretty much all of them that are there. So if we're going to change those, and I'm not suggesting that we do right now. I think this is a tool that we use well, but I'm happy to open up that debate and talk through which of those features should maybe make that list.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner?
And I'll support what Commissioner Saver said. It's the fact that we're taking 3 underutilized assets on the Michigan Street corridor and creating new income tax for the city. And that property tax will come back on the roll at some point, which will be in 10 or 12 years or whatever the term is here. Those property taxes will come on the roll too, so there's a net win there. And if you look at the track record, there was information shared from the Economic Development Department last week that these are estimates, that many of the tax incentives that we as a body have approved over the course of the last several years actually have much bigger net wins than what is anticipated by the developer at time of application. And not to say that all of them do, but I think there are many success stories that show that these are projections, and that oftentimes the number of jobs in the job wage range far exceeds what is anticipated by the developer. So I think this is just a win-win-win all around, and we should continue to use these as a tool to induce economic development.
Commissioner?
Commissioner, thank you for sharing that. And I think part of what we're experiencing is we're not sharing those stories often enough so that the public can understand the impact of the incentives that we're offering. And so to Commissioner Allen's point, I think we have to tell the story. We have to own what it is that we're doing, what the incentives are doing for the tax base for our community, and we need to do whatever we can to collect real data to share back, because I agree that the length of some of the NEZs, the wages of some of the NEZs, they're not necessarily, it could be perceived as though it's not necessarily helping the community. And I think in some ways they are, and they are used to be able to revitalize some underutilized buildings. But I also recognize that affordable housing is an issue that we've been grappling with for some time now, and people are looking for real change, real decisions with existing data that supports that we are supportive of affordable housing. And sometimes when we're approving these it sends the message that we're not necessarily doing that. And so I think it can be both, but I think we have to make sure that we're telling the story of examples like you just described of when this is working well and it's in our best interest to do an NEZ tax exemption.
Mayor.
And Commissioner, I think that highlights the point that I think many of us have been saying for quite some time about our need around communication. If you've had a chance to read the draft of the Parks Master Plan, it's highlighted in there as well, the need to really do a better job of communicating the community about what we're doing, what's available, and I think you're absolutely right.
Just two real quick comments that I want to belabor a point. I agree with Commissioner O'Connor that the results that we're seeing are typically far greater than what they were anticipated, but I would argue that the results are not benefiting everybody in the city. They're certainly not benefiting the poor because they continually get left behind. So we have a responsibility there, and I would point out these aren't alternative facts, these are facts. Haha. At $925 a month.
We're only going to talk about facts around this table. Let me make that very clear, commissioners.
At $925 a month for a one-bedroom apartment,
Yeah.
based on the standard that we've adopted, that a person shouldn't pay more than 30% of their monthly income for their housing, a person would have to make $37,000 a year to afford $925 for a one-bedroom apartment, and $15 an hour only gives you $30,000 a year. So the very wages they're creating, the people who are working there can't afford to live in the apartments that they're making. That's a problem.
Any other comments?
Where's the microphone you dropped?
I think we'll
Commissioner,
save it for a future debate.
It is. It's an important, I feel like we have wrestled with this for well over a year now, and trying to identify what we can do in our capacity to have an impact as quickly as possible is something that all of us care about. And that's why we adopted the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, put together the Housing Advisory Committee, hoping to have some good recommendations come out of that very quickly. This is a priority for all of us. How we're going to get there, we may differ on that opinion, but it's a priority nonetheless. So thank you all. All right, any other comments specific to this NEZ? All right, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next, that will take us to a resolution providing for the publication of a proposed ordinance, amending Chapter 170 of the Municipal Civil Infractions to establish fines for violations of Chapters 131, 132, 133, and 134. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, so Elizabeth, you want to tell us about this? Commissioners, you will recall we have talked about this and I had an opportunity for public comment.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Yes, as you've stated, this is part of the work that you might recall Lou Canfield has been coming to you and presenting. It's a three-part process. The first part involved the amendment to the ordinance to establish the appeals board and get that language straightened out. The second part was the decriminalization of the code so that a first offense for a contractor, failure to pull a permit or failure to perform work according to that permit, that's now, with tonight's approval, that'll come back to you tonight, will be a sort of a three strikes and you're out arrangement, the first three being civil infractions, the fourth being a misdemeanor. So it gives Lou and his team a little more tools in their toolbox to do that enforcement work. This is the third part of that cleanup then, and it actually establishes the civil infractions and sets the fines at $100, $200, $300 respectively for those first three offenses, and then establishes the fourth offense as a misdemeanor. So this item will be coming back to you in 2 weeks for final adoption, and then we'll have the whole process complete.
Okay. Questions? Glenn?
Yes, Elizabeth, I remember us talking about this, but I wasn't sure that we were starting with $100 for the first offense. Can you tell me how we landed with that dollar amount? I know we were planning to look at other fines. Which fines did we look at in order to come up with the fee structure that we have here?
These fines mirror the Chapter 140, which is the housing code violations,
Okay.
to try to keep everything consistent.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Other questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? It carries. All right, next that will take us to